Welcome to the Woodturning Workshop. Melinda doesn't know I'm in the kitchen again. Today's ingredients are going to be a little bit of maple, some basswood, and some mystery wood. And what will we be cooking up? But this nice ladle that you can use in the kitchen. Stay tuned. It's going to be a lot of fun.
The Woodturning Workshop is made possible in part by
Woodcraft since 1928, providing traditional and modern woodworking tools and supplies to generations of craftsmen. Woodcraft, helping you make wood work.
Easy Wood Tools, offering a full line of wood turning tools with replaceable carbide cutters.
I want to thank Soren Berger, our friend in New Zealand, for letting us do his project today, and it's a really cool one. This is a ladle, and it's actually made of one piece of wood. It involves a little bit of hollowing, also some off-center turning to make the handle. Really neat project, and this is a useful tool. It is something you can use in the kitchen. With my cooking skills, I'm not quite too sure. Now, this is a beautiful wood. The only problem I have with it is it's very rare, and it's a very complicated name. It's called Darn If I Know. Darn if I know. I have no idea. I've had this piece of wood in the shop for about 15 years, and I can't find the name for it anymore. Well, the ingredients for this project are a piece of Darn If I Know, probably about 10 inches long and 3 inches square. We're going to use a piece of hard maple and a piece of basswood to make some jigs. And the first jig we're going to make is a jig which will help us make a circle. We're going to use it to follow the outside of our ladle as we work on it. It'll make that sphere very nice. The other one is we'll be making a jig that we can jam fit this into so we can turn and hollow the inside. Well, let's get started. We're going to make our little circle jig first. The tools we'll be using today are a roughing gouge, a large spindle gouge, a small spindle gouge, a detail spindle gouge, a skew, a small round nose scraper, a large round nose bowl scraper, and a carbide tip hollowing tool. Now I've got my chuck on the lathe. Excuse me, got a scratch in my throat today. I've labeled this 1 right here. That's upside down for you, 1 right there, because this is my number 1 jaw. Whenever you take something off of a chuck and you want it to get it back to where it was so it's perfectly and round or as close as possible, number it, because if you put this over to here, it'll wobble more. Kind of a weird thing, not a big deal, but it's something that happens. So we're going to grab our roughing gouge and we're going to round this out to about 1 inch in diameter. Turn the speed up a little bit. Okay, we're down to the diameter we want, and we've got our little jig, and it's made of hard maple. And so if you look at it right here, it's kind of like this right now. And I'm going to start making this shape right here because it's hard to hang on to this if it's not got a scoop in it for your fingers, and the way my fingers work anymore, I need all the help I can get. So we just start on either side, work our way back in, like so. And we're using hard maple because if we use something like basswood, this edge would get too brittle and probably break off. And we want a very clean edge on here, so when we're putting this up against our wood to make that sphere, we'll be able to see the edge perfectly. We want a nice sharp intersection. Okay, so that's pretty good. We'll just come here, we're going to shape the top a little bit. And now I'm going to come back out and grab a different tool. And we're going to turn the lathe off and move all this, because we're going to take the tool rest and bring it around to this side. And we're going to do a little bit of hollowing with just a round nose scraper. Nothing fancy. Get this out of the way. Come back here. We want this to be right at center height. That looks pretty good. Bring this in, turn it back on, and we're just going to come in and clean this out. And again, it's just a scraper, so I'm pushing in. Nothing fancy. It doesn't have to be beautiful. Get rid of this little center, like so. Come back here. Now here's the critical cut. I want to come in here like so and see the edge getting tinier and tinier. I want to make that as sharp as I can. That way this intersecting edge right here is very fine. It's going to come in very handy in just a few minutes. Okay, for the last few minutes, I've been roughing out our Darnafino blank. And it's kind of obvious, our ladle is sitting just like this in the wood. And I'm roughing down to the handle a little bit, but what we're going to start working on now is the ball or the sphere of the ladle itself. So, I want to take my calipers, take them out here, and get the diameter of the wood. So once I get the diameter of the wood set, that's how wide it is that way, so a sphere is, you know, equal distance on all sides. So let's make a mark here and a mark here. We want to leave us some extra space here. My handle will probably end up down here somewhere, so that'll look good. We know the end of our ladle ball is right there. So we'll turn this on real quick and make a mark, and then we're just going to guesstimate eye it in there. There's the center of our ball. We don't want to cut away that line. What we do want to do is come up here with our big, good old fat regular grind spindle gouge and start making a bead. And as we all know, you sneak up on a bead. So I'm going to clear out a lot of excess wood right here on the end so I can start working in on this curve right here. We're using this just like you'd use a roughing gouge, basically. Now one trick you can do, well, I've got that right there. I'm going to take my parting tool and come in here and part down a ways so I know where the end of that ball is for the ladle. Come in here, come out, make a clearing cut, so I have a little room for the tool, come back down in here. So now it's easier for me to keep track of the ladle itself. So we can come back in and we'll start attacking the ball. Now, tool's against my hip, just gonna bring it up, the heel or the bevel of the tool's rubbing. I raise it up till I see shavings move, and you see everything kind of rotates, and my body makes the movement. Cut, move, and you have to swing quite a ways to come around the corner on a bead. So don't forget to move your body, make the big, slow movements you have to make this shape. And just be careful about one thing. Don't take off too much wood, because as always, you can't put wood back on. Now you can see I've been working my way on this a little bit more. I've removed a lot of wood off the handle to give me access to make this cut. Now the reason I'm using the large spindle gouge is because it has such a gradual curve to it. It helps me make a gradually curved bead. If I use a tool with a sharper profile, it'd be way too aggressive. Now, our little circle jig is going to help us out because when I lay this down here, you can see a gap there. You see the shadow? Now watch, when I come over here, it goes away. That shows that I've got myself pretty close to a perfect sphere at that point. So I'm going to keep whittling this down and checking the shape. And once I have it into a nice round shape, then we can start moving on to the handle. So again, we take nice slow movement, and right there is the end of my ball. So I don't want to go any closer to the left or I'll start making it too short and it'll become oblong. And come in here again. See, now we're really close. We're just right about on it. Sanding will take out any irregularities at that point. Okay, I'm just taking a little bit off, just shaping it lightly, using my skew on its side as a scraper. And judging by my little gauge here, we are really, really close. And it's very important that we get really close to a perfect circle. We don't have to be perfect, but the deal is, you're going to take this in a minute, and we're going to jam fit it into a chuck here, a homemade chuck. And so if it's oval, it's not going to fit in there and hold. So that's why we have to be very careful about this one step. Now, the next thing I want to do is start working on the handle. And I've removed a little bit more wood off camera. And let's start chunking away at that with our spindle gouge. And I want to make a transition from the ball to the handle. So we'll just do a nice little sweeping motion like this. Now the handle's going to be a little bit on the thick side, but then we're going to thin it out again in a step that comes up in a minute. And you can see I'm just almost using this like a roughing gouge and with a sweeping motion. Sweeping, sweeping like this. Now the transition I want is right here, and let me switch to my detail spindle gouge. That's the one with the really long tip. and it's also very shallow, so it allows you to hang out really far over the tool rest without any problems. So I'm going to take the tool and come in right here. You can see it's like a spear point almost. I'm going to make a cut. I'm going to come in here. It's like using a skew. Come in here and nibble that away, and see I'm getting that nice clean transition between it and the ladle part of our ladle, I guess the bowl part of our ladle. So that's nice and clean. That won't even need any sanding. So now, start working again on worrying down the wood to make the rest of the handle. Again, it's a sweep. You can see it's a body movement. I'm swinging. I've got the tool into my stomach. It's a short handle, but I have a big stomach, so it works out okay. And I just keep swinging and swinging. And you can work your way from either end, but I just want to keep my handle consistent by working my way back, so this helps me just set my depth. You see I'm not going for anything beautiful right now, I'm just removing the wood. I don't want to go thinner than that. That's a little bit proud of a ½ inch, probably 5/8 of an inch, and that's good because it'll serve us well in our next step. Now the length of the handle is up to you. It can be really, really long if you want. Just leave the handle a little bit thicker if you're going to do that. So I keep swinging like this, and now I'll just take the tool and just kind of come across and just run my body straight across really lightly and take out those bumps, come back, and I'm using my body to pull this. I'm not using my hands. So my body's shifting and leaning, and I'm evening out the handle. Okay? Now I'm going to work on this a little bit more, and while I do that, it's time for your turn. Well, it is a nice, bright, sunshiny morning here in Oklahoma, and that brings me to a question from a viewer in Chicago who asked, how do you light your work in your shop? Well, this type of lighting is wonderful. Everything looks good, it's really illuminated, it's sharp, but look at this. When I take it and turn here, all of a sudden I see all the imperfections in the wood. You need lighting that comes in from an angle so you can see all the stuff that you have to get rid of. So now you know how to make your lighting work for you. Okay, gone ahead and sanded down to 320 grit. And now I'm going to show you a cool little trick. I brought a light up because I'm going to need it to help me out with this in just a second. We're going to take our livestock, back it off, our tailstock, and back it off with our live center. And go over about 1/4 of an inch off center and put that back in. So now watch as I rotate this, it's off center. And this is why I need the light, because when I start this on, you've got a ghost image, right? So we're going to come back now with our handle and just return the handle slightly and use our spindle gouge to do it. You're cutting air, so you don't want to be too aggressive here. I'm going to sweep across like so, and I'll stop this and I'll show you the effect we're starting to get. See, we're starting to get a flatter handle with this really cool shape here. So we're going to work on this a minute. And we'll refine this. Take delicate cuts with it. If you take a really big cut, it chips the wood out. And you will get some chip out. That will happen. But I'm going from high to low since it's a spindle turning. I don't want to tear the grain out by going uphill. So we're coming from here back. And you can see that ghost image. It's pretty cool. We're going to work our way all the way up to the end here. Almost done. Let's come up here one more time right here. Now, depending on how thick you leave the handle depends on how big of an effect you can have and how far off center you can place this. So let's see how it's doing here. That's pretty cool, isn't it? So it's going to take a little bit of hand sanding now, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next step. Okay, we hand sanded down to 320, and we're going to move this back onto center. Now, one thing I did is, remember, keep a nice straight line here as you sand, and that edge makes the effect look that much more stunning. So we'll back this off, and we're going to put it back on center. Might take you a couple tries to get it right where it should be. It's a little bit off yet. There should be a mark still left by your live center, which helps you get back online. There we go. Bring that up tight again. Put my googles on for my eye protection, and we're going to take our spindle gouge and we're going to just clean up the end of the handle here. So just slowly, like making a bead again, come in here and take this off. Now the point from the live center is going to be going into the bottom of this wood a little bit. So we're going to need to kind of leave this a little bit short here. We want to come in a little bit tighter. That way I don't have a hole in the bottom of this. And that looks pretty good. I'm pretty close to parting that off, but I need to go to the other end and work on the other end of the ladle now. Now with our detail spindle gouge, I'm going to worry the wood away a bit here. And you have to be careful. This wood I'm using today, I found out, is a little bit porous and a little bit brittle. So I don't want to make this too tight here. But I want to finish up the sphere as best I can. And instead of parting this off, I'm going to leave a little nub on here, because if I parted it off, I'm running the risk of putting a hole in the wood. So I'm going to take this down a little bit more, as far as my nerves can allow me to take it. And that remainder I'm going to take off with a little bitty chisel, and then sand that end flat and do the same to the end of the handle. Okay, I'm playing around now with the jam fit jig we're making to hold our ladle. Kind of a nice weapon right now. Really hefty rattle for some child. The goal is to make this into a jam fit, and I'm getting there. Now I don't need this hole to be shaped like the ball. I need to go straight in. I just want these edges to hang on. And we've got a little ways to go there, so let me put the tool rest back, take a little bit off. And you just want to work around the edge a bit, because if you work your way in too deep and you make this too wide, you got a lot more cutting to do. So there we go. And I'm using my broad round nose bowl scraper right now to do this, and I used my bowl gouge to shape this in the beginning. See how that's working? Oh, that is perfect. Now I want to do one thing, and that is to take some mineral oil, because that's going to be our finish for the ladle itself. We're just going to get a little messy here and put a bunch of it on here, and we're going to take it and wipe it into the hole. By putting mineral oil into the hole, get a little more, we're making the wood a little bit moister, right? And that'll give us a better grip on the edges here. So we'll get that worked in good. Now we're going to take the ladle, and we want this edge to be pretty close to that edge, because we don't want this handle out too far. But we also want to rotate it to where the flat part is facing out. For aesthetic purposes, we'll make sure that's good. We're going to take that. Let's see here. Let me get a piece of wood to help me out here. Oops. Okay, that's in there nice and strong. We're ready for our next step. Okay, I have my Jacobs chuck with about a 1/8 inch bit in here, and my green tape shows me how deep to go into the ladle without going through. It'll leave me about a 1/4 inch depth. Now watch out when you start this, because you're going to have that handle swinging around. And we slow down the lathe, and we're going to, whoa, there we go, get a little bit in there, there we go. We're just going in, and we're going to drill this hole out. And like I said, that'll show us how deep we need to make the bowl of the ladle. Okay, I've added a little bit of light, because when you hollow, you need more light. Now the other important thing is you've got to make sure you keep your hands away from this handle as it's whizzing around. That is a real knuckle cracker. And I've actually got my tool rest set further back than normally would, because if you're using a bowl gouge, you're going to bring it really close so you're not overhanging too far. My weapon of choice today is going to be this really sturdy hollowing tool that has a round nose scraper on it, or actually a cutter. That will help me reach out and stay away from everything and start doing my hollowing. So I'll start this up. We're going to bring the speed up. Okay, I don't want to go any faster than that. You want to take very gentle cuts, because you can pop this thing out easily. So we're just going to take this and push in a little bit, nibble away the wood. Very gentle cuts. Take your time, you're in no hurry. Now it's really hard now to tell where the handle begins or actually where the handle intersects the ladle, I can kind of see it. It's right about in this area here. You actually are going to start turning away the top part of the handle, because if you didn't do that, your ladle would be too narrow at the top. It'd be more like a cup. So I'm just gently going in here, a little bit at a time. And it's also nice having that hole drilled because I don't have to worry about that finicky little nub of wood right in the center, which can cause a catch and which could pop the ladle out of its jam chuck. Okay, now I'm at that transition between the handle and the ladle I was telling you about. And you can see on this one, you just simply cut it away, because if you don't cut it away, you're very narrow, and see how much wider I was able to work it by going down deeper. So I'll be able to make this pretty much that wide by cutting down into the handle, and it'll make it a really nice wide mouth on that. So we'll get back to turning here, start the lathe back up, and again, very gently start bringing the tool in. And it's a push cut actually with this, which is nice because by pushing, I'm actually pushing into the jam chuck. It's nicer than actually using a bowl gouge and sweeping out, because if you're sweeping out, you're pulling out against the jam chuck, which could loosen the ladle out of there. And again, keep your fingers back of the tool rest. You don't want to bust your knuckles up at all. I can feel myself starting to hit the handle now. Hear that? And just make a nice light cut. If you take too big of a cut, you'll start tearing out the grain, and then you'll have to clean that up later if you do. Okay, I'm taking my calipers here. They have this little rod that comes out the back end, which is kind of handy for depth measurements. And I want to come in here, and my drilled hole in there, and I don't know if you can see it, but I'm going to put this down to the bottom of that hole I drilled. And geez, I've got maybe 1/8 of an inch to go to get to the bottom. So I'm going to switch now from my carbide tip hollowing tool to my big old boy round nose bowl scraper. It might seem like overkill, but this is a nice shape to go on the inside of this, and as long as I take nice light cuts, it won't be a problem. So I'm going to use this now and just slowly work my way down. Now remember, you're going to have to guess at the thickness on this, so you're going to have to go by eye as to how thick the walls are. But as long as you have that bottom depth figured out, you should be okay. And you don't want to make this ultra thin, because it's going to be something that you're going to use in the kitchen. It's going to have a purpose. It's going to be beat up, moved around, put in drawers. So you want to have a little heft to it, a little sturdiness to it. So once I get this down to where I want it, I'm going to sand the inside smooth. Okay, sanded everything down to 320. Now a moment of truth, can we get it back out? Ah, very nice. Now, if there are any marks from where I was in the jam chuck, just take your 320 and rub over it again. But I don't see any problems right now. So I'm going to take mineral oil as our finish, because it's an easy to reapply finish. And this is going to be used in the kitchen, so it's going to get wet, it's going to get messed up and everything. Look at that wood coming out. The darn if I know is one of the best looking woods I've seen in a long time. And anyway, one thing to keep in mind, after you rub this on, you might find the wood feels a little bit fuzzy. Just come back with your 320 again, and you can wet sand it, and it'll take off any edges of the grain that have come up. Really nice project. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. Until next time on the Wood Turning Workshop, keep turning. I think it's time to put this thing to use now.
Hey, see if you like this. Does that taste good?
You like my cooking finally. That's a good boy. Is that really nice stuff? Yeah. Need more salt? I don't think so. You're a good guy.
Next time on the Woodturning Workshop.
We're going to show you how to make your platters pretty with the help of our guest, Trent Bosch.
And I've been doing some sandblasting on those and some coloring and some carving as well.
Close it up a little bit and continue my cut like that.
Oh, you're looking beautiful there, Brian.
I'll make it work.
What are you using now?
I'm using a little reciprocating carver, and I hope it inspires somebody to go ahead and start carving.
For more information about the Woodturning Workshop, visit our website at rsupublictv.org.
Roughing out the
Okay, ready?
take your handle here. Yeah, take your handle here. The chuck or jig or what is it called? Never mind. Okay, now I have a Forstner bit. No, I don't. Oh.
The Woodturning Workshop is made possible in part by
Woodcraft, since 1928, providing traditional and modern woodworking tools and supplies to generations of craftsmen. Woodcraft, helping you make wood work.
Easy Wood Tools, offering a full line of wood-turning tools with replaceable carbide cutters. To order a DVD of this or any other episode, call 1-800-823-7210 or visit rsupublictv.org.
This week on the Woodturning Workshop, we're back in the kitchen and we're cooking up something special. We're going to be making a ladle. Now you can see I've been working my way on this a little bit more. I've removed a lot of wood off the handle. We hand sanded down to 320 and we're going to move this back onto center. Watch out when you start this because you're going to have that handle swinging around. See if you like this. Does that taste good? You like my cooking finally.